Have you ever noticed how, just as good things arrive in your life, a quieter part of you begins working to destroy them? Standing at the edge of happiness, something pulls you back, as if contentment itself were dangerous. How many sweet beginnings have you unraveled with your own hands? How often have you wondered why safety becomes suffocating, why certainty becomes a cage? You are not alone in this contradiction. This battle between what you consciously desire and what you unconsciously destroy has been waged in the human heart since our earliest days. There exists a profound paradox within us. We chase dreams with fevered determination, yet when those dreams materialize, we find ways, subtle, nearly invisible ways, to ensure they crumble. This isn't mere coincidence or bad luck. This pattern carries fingerprints too deliberate to be accident, too consistent to be random. You are both the architect and the demolition crew. Behind your conscious mind, that voice you recognize as you, lurks another intelligence. A shadow programmer writing code that contradicts your stated desires, following rules you never consciously approved. Sigmund Freud called this phenomenon repetition compulsion. He observed how patients would unconsciously recreate painful situations from their past, despite their conscious desires for peace and happiness. He believed we harbor a drive towards self-destruction that operates beneath awareness. What we cannot remember, we are condemned to repeat, not as memory, but as behavior, as sabotage disguised as choice. What painful symmetry there is in watching your relationships fail in identical ways. The same arguments, the same disappointments, different faces, but the same wounds reopening. You become a time traveler without realizing it. Each new opportunity becomes contaminated by old fears. Each potential paradise becomes haunted by the ghosts of past collapses. When success approaches, anxiety rises like floodwater. When love deepens, an inexplicable urge to test its limits emerges. When peace settles in your heart, restlessness follows like a shadow. Consider how many times you've created impossible standards, picked fights over nothing, or withdrawn precisely when connection was within reach. These weren't choices, they were programs running automatically. The saboteur within doesn't announce itself with declarations. It whispers justifications so reasonable you mistake them for wisdom. It manufactures doubts so familiar you mistake them for intuition. This is too good to be true. They'll leave eventually anyway. I don't deserve this. These thoughts arrive not as intruders, but as trusted advisors, protecting you from some greater imagined harm. What Freud understood, what we still struggle to accept, is that we fear success more than failure. Failure confirms our narrative. Success demands we rewrite everything we believe about ourselves. The psyche prefers the devil it knows to the angel it doesn't. Your unconscious would rather repeat familiar suffering than venture into unfamiliar joy. At least in suffering, you know who you are. This is the first terrible truth. The very things you long for, love, success, peace, trigger ancient alarms in your system. Your conscious desire and unconscious programming are at war. But what causes this self-sabotage? What hidden benefit could possibly outweigh the pain of watching your own hands dismantle your happiness? The answer lies in understanding what Freud called secondary gain. Secondary gain is the unconscious advantage we receive from problematic behaviors. Self-sabotage, despite its obvious costs, offers hidden rewards that keep the pattern locked in place. By destroying what you build, you maintain a familiar identity. If you've always seen yourself as unlucky in love, success and relationship threatens that self-concept. Your psyche resists this identity death. By sabotaging opportunity, you protect yourself from the vulnerability of hope. If you never fully commit, you never fully lose. If you leave first, you control the abandonment. These are the bargains we make. By creating chaos, you recreate childhood emotional landscapes. If unpredictability and drama were your earliest experiences of love, the calm waters of healthy attachment can feel eerily threatening. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre understood this paradox deeply. He spoke of bad faith, the ways we deceive ourselves to avoid the terrifying freedom of authentic choice and responsibility. When we sabotage, we play both the victim and the perpetrator in our own story. We create the conditions for our suffering, then point outward as if fate alone were responsible. This dual role allows us to remain in control while simultaneously avoiding responsibility. We become authors pretending to be characters, directors pretending to be actors, puppeteers pretending to be puppets. Picture a child raised in a house where love is conditional. To receive care, they learn to diminish themselves. Their authentic expression is punished, their compliance is rewarded. They survive by adapting. Decades later, that same child, now an adult, finds someone who loves them completely. But this love feels foreign, even threatening. It contradicts everything their nervous system learned about survival. So they test this love. They become difficult, withdrawn, unreasonable. They create impossible standards no partner could meet. They unconsciously orchestrate the very rejection they consciously fear. When the relationship ends, there's pain, but also relief. The world makes sense again. The old story remains intact. The terror of becoming someone new has been avoided at all costs. This is the cruel mathematics of trauma. What once protected you now imprisons you. What once helped you survive now prevents you from truly living. Yesterday's solution becomes today's problem. Carl Jung, building on Freud's insights, spoke of the shadow, those disowned parts of ourselves that operate autonomously precisely because we refuse to acknowledge them. What we deny controls us. Your inner saboteur is not your enemy. It is a fragmented part of you, a younger self frozen in time, still operating according to rules that once kept you safe in environments that no longer exist. This shadow within doesn't want to hurt you. It wants to protect you from what it perceives as greater dangers: vulnerability, disappointment, shame, abandonment. It would rather you never try than risk catastrophic failure. The path forward requires understanding this pattern without judgment. Self-hatred only strengthens the cycle. The saboteur wasn't born from malice, but from misguided love, a part of you trying desperately to help. Consider the metaphor of internal family systems therapy. Inside you lives not a single self, but a family of selves, each with different fears, desires, and beliefs about what you need. Your inner critic developed to prevent rejection by finding flaws before others could. Your inner isolationist learned that people meant pain. Your inner perfectionist believed that flawlessness could finally earn love. These parts have been operating automatically, like programs running in the background of your consciousness. They continue their work long after the original danger has passed, stuck in emotional time. Healing begins with curiosity rather than contempt. When the urge to sabotage arises, ask yourself, what is this part of me afraid might happen? What is it trying to protect me from? The philosopher Martin Heidegger spoke of authentic existence, living with full awareness of our choices and their meanings. The saboteur thrives in shadows. It cannot survive the illumination of conscious attention. When you feel the familiar urge to run from opportunity, to create problems where none exist, to test love until it breaks, pause. This moment of awareness creates space between impulse and action. In that space lies your freedom. Not freedom from the feeling, but freedom from automatic reaction to it. The saboteur may still whisper, but you no longer need to follow its directions. This is where tragedy can transform into possibility. The very sensitivity that makes you vulnerable to self-sabotage, your deep feeling, your awareness of nuance, becomes your greatest strength. Like fire that can either warm or consume, your emotional depth can either destroy or illuminate. The difference lies not in changing who you are, but in bringing consciousness to parts that operate in darkness. When Kierkegaard wrote of the sickness unto death, he was describing the despair of being unconscious of one's own self. We cannot change what we refuse to see or acknowledge within us. The journey toward wholeness requires radical honesty. Can you admit that part of you is terrified of the very success you claim to want? Can you see how you become skilled at engineering failure? This admission isn't defeat. It's the beginning of integration. What was fragmented can become whole. What operated in shadow can be brought into light. What was automatic can become chosen. If this resonates with you, if you recognize your own handprints on the rubble of collapsed possibilities, know that you've taken the first crucial step. Awareness precedes transformation. Seeing is the beginning of healing. The most powerful reframe comes from understanding that your capacity for self-sabotage is actually evidence of your power. The same force that can destroy can also create, once redirected consciously. Think of water. Uncontained, it floods and destroys. Channeled properly, it generates electricity, sustains life, carves canyons of breathtaking beauty. Your emotional intensity holds the same potential for creation or destruction. The saboteur's energy can be redirected. The hypervigilance that spots problems can become discernment that recognizes opportunity. The sensitivity to pain can become capacity for joy. The fear can become courage. Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher, taught that we cannot control external events, only our responses to them. When the urge to sabotage arises, you cannot prevent the feeling, but you can choose your response. This choice becomes easier with practice. Each time you recognize the pattern without acting on it, new neural pathways form. The old road becomes less traveled. The new path becomes more accessible. As you develop this awareness, you'll begin to notice changes in your external reality. Relationships last longer. Projects reach completion. Opportunities don't mysteriously vanish. Success doesn't feel like an impending disaster. Others will notice too. Those who were once kept at arm's length will feel your new capacity for closeness. Those who expected your withdrawal will be surprised by your presence. Your consistency will build trust. The greatest revelation comes when you realize that self-sabotage was never about unworthiness. It was about fear. Fear that if you received what you truly wanted, you'd have nothing left to chase. We are strange creatures who often prefer the comfort of yearning to the terror of fulfillment. There is identity in wanting. There is safety in familiar dissatisfaction. There is control in orchestrated failure. But there is something greater waiting beyond these comfortable limitations. There is a life where your actions align with your deepest desires, where your unconscious and conscious minds work in harmony rather than opposition. This integration doesn't happen overnight. Old patterns may resurface, especially during stress or transitions. The difference is that now you recognize them for what they are: outdated protection mechanisms, not truth. What would become possible if you stopped running from your own light? What relationships might deepen? What creative works might you complete? What peace might settle in your heart if you allowed it? The philosopher Hannah Arendt spoke of natality, our capacity to begin anew, to bring something novel into the world through our choices. Each moment offers this possibility of rebirth, of choosing differently. Your patterns of sabotage have deep roots, but they are not your destiny. They are habits of mind and heart that can be recognized, understood, and gradually transformed through persistent, compassionate awareness. The very fact that you can recognize these patterns means you're already partially free from them. The prison door is ajar. The light is visible. The choice to step through remains yours. Remember that behind every act of self-sabotage lies a deep, misguided form of self-protection. Healing comes not from battling these protective parts, but from showing them that the danger they perceive has passed. You stand now at a crossroads. Behind you lies the familiar landscape of potential abandoned, of relationships tested until breaking, of success approached then fled. It is a known territory, mapped in detail. Before you stretches something less certain, a life where you might actually receive what you desire, where love might actually last, where success might actually arrive, and, most terrifyingly, stay. As Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act, just once, with beauty and courage. Your saboteur is such a dragon, fearsome in appearance but waiting for transformation. In treating it with understanding rather than hatred, you begin this alchemical process of turning fear into power. The greatest truth awaits you on this path. You are never broken. Your patterns of self-sabotage, however destructive, were evidence of your mind's remarkable ability to adapt and protect itself under difficult conditions. Now, with adult awareness, you can thank these protective parts for their service while gently relieving them of duties that no longer serve you. You can become the conscious author of your own story. This is your invitation, not to perfection, but to presence. Not to eliminate all self-doubt, but to recognize it without automatically obeying. Not to never feel afraid, but to act with courage anyway. In this awareness lies your freedom. In this understanding lies your power. In this acceptance of your full humanity, both light and shadow, lies the path to the life you've always claimed to want. The question remains, will you continue to be the saboteur of your own joy, or will you become the guardian of your own potential? The choice, as it has always been, remains entirely yours.